This guitar lesson will be posted on the TrueFire.com website and will be included in a published series for their next top guitar instructor submissions. Student votes combined with judges' scores will determine TrueFire's next top guitar instructor, and final rankings will be posted on their website. So be sure to head over and check out all the postings for the top 10 finalist submissions. I'm Wasson from Creative Guitar Studio. Thanks for joining me for another one of my guitar lessons. This time we're going to have a very interesting discussion on expanding and improving upon your musical sense and logic. A lot of this will have to do with some principles that I'm going to borrow from the famous jazz guitar player and teacher Howard Roberts, the founder of GIT. Now this came around through a question that was actually sent in from Eldon. He lives in Manchester, England, and he wrote in saying, I'm a songwriter with a GIT style educational question. I was wondering, with all your extensive training, if you could make a video on strategies for increasing the speed for composing and performing music. GIT seems like a school that's perfected teaching both guitar technique and real musicianship. I was hoping you could run through this. From Eldon in Manchester, England. Well, hey, thanks for writing in, Eldon. As you and as others may very well know, GIT was founded by jazz guitarist Howard Roberts and music businessman Pat Hicks, and Howard was very dedicated to the concept of applying accelerated learning principles to the study of both songwriting and studying the guitar. For many years throughout the 1980s, Howard also wrote a column for Guitar Player magazine, where during this period he actually broke down many of the concepts from his popular GIT course book on speed learning for guitar. So in this lesson, I'll be covering the Howard Roberts approach for a number of his unique methods that can be really helpful to improve musical logic when you're composing or studying improvisation or just working on your general everyday guitar abilities and techniques. Well, our first step will be the examination of altering small musical fragments so that we can refocus ourselves on a musical line. Now, the goal here is to begin with a simple line, and the starting phrase that I have is shown in your handout as example number 1. Sounds like this. And we're going to take that in example number 2, and we're going to go ahead and recharacterize the part by flipping the part pretty heavy in the direction of adding embellishments to the phrase. So here's how this second example sounds. In example 3, we're going to calm down on those embellishments a bit, but I'm going to add in a popular altered tone. It's the flat 5 or diminished fifth, and here we go. This is what it sounds like. This is example number 3. Now, I'll bet that, in adding that flat 5 in, you would have expected it to generate some kind of a bluesy sound. But it actually takes on almost more of a Middle Eastern effect. And it's a good learning here in the fact that it's teaching us that intervals don't always have the expected musical effect that you might think they'd have. Now, next up, I'm going to be taking a look at what Howard Roberts calls subtractive playing. And in doing this, we're going to begin from a pre-selected chord. In this example, we're going to use the D dominant 7th. And you'll find that in example number 4 of your handout. And we're going to play through, also found in example number 4 of the handout, is going to be the D chromatic scale. Now, with all these chromatic notes fresh in our mind around that D7 chord, next thing we're going to do is break things down into the world of another scale. And then for this second scale choice, I'm going to choose pentatonic. In this case, it's going to be D major pentatonic. That's in your handout as example number 5A. And the next thing we're going to do is do some subtractive work by modulating through notes from the pentatonic scale with notes from the chromatic scale. And the effort here is going to be placed on blending a line that combines elements from both of the scales. And this can be found in your handout as example number 5B. There's almost unlimited ways of doing this. I'm just going to change the top note a little bit in this phrase. This is example 5C. You can hear there, instead of going, E to F, I just went from E flat into the E natural. Changed it slightly at the end of the phrase. So there's unlimited ways that you can do this subtracting method over and over again using the chromatic scale as your base point and then your selected chord. And you can use a pentatonic of either major or minor. It's up to you. If you're using dominant 7th chords, well, that's a little bit more flexible there. You could use minor or major pentatonic for that. But it's a very cool way to start adding in passing tones and chromaticism to your playing without having to get into too much detail of specifically what kinds of intervals that you're worried about adding in. Now, in example number 6, I'll be running through one of my favorite ideas that's generally referred to as learning through economy. It rests upon the idea of, instead of approaching the learning of new material from the standpoint of it being completely brand new information, we can not only learn but also understand material much faster when we economize the learning with respect to what we already have learned in the past. Now, in example number 6A, I have a basic D major scale. And in example number 6B, I'm going to change one note of that scale, and it's going to be the 7th degree note. Instead of C sharp, I'm going to drop it down to C natural. That's in your handout as example number 6B. And that actually gives me a D Mixolydian mode. It's nearly the same scale as the basic D major scale, but the only difference is that lowered 7th degree. And now we've gone from basic major into Mixolydian. So this idea can be actually taken quite far. You can even build very unique scales, such as even altered types. So I demonstrated that in example number 6C. I'm going to lower the 2nd degree of that Mixolydian and the 5th degree as well. So we're going to create a very unique altered scale. This is what it sounds like. It can fit quite nicely over top of D7, flat 9, flat 5. It's a very interesting sound. Okay, so this concept of expanding your learning curve through economy of ideas can even be stretched out into the world of chords. And in example number 7, I'm starting with just a simple 5th position D major bar chord. I'm going to branch out from there by way of changing just one note in the shape each time. So in example number 7A, we have our basic D major chord. And then in example number 7B, we're going to change the top note. Off of that 2nd string, we're going to go from F sharp to F natural and quickly and easily create a D minor chord. So with the note as F sharp, it's D major. With the drop down to F natural, it's D minor. In example number 7C, we're going to take that same D major chord and we're going to lower the 3rd string note by 1 step and we're going to create D major 7. In example number 7D, we're going to lower the third string note yet again and create D dominant 7th. In example number 7E, we're going to shift out of that major 7 chord, we're going to shift 2 notes over. Or if you're thinking in terms of that dominant 7th, we're just going to shift 1 note over. And we're going to create a D minor 7 chord. Now if we're on D minor 7 and we just shift 1 note from the 4th string, we're going to get D minor 7 flat 5. That's in your handout as example number 7F. And if you shift just 1 note from D minor 7 flat 5, it's the 3rd string note again, dropping down to the 4th fret, we're going to get a D diminished 7th. That's in your handout as example number 7G. So overall, you can just see there's 1 note moving in every one of these chord changes, and we're creating new chords. It's a very powerful concept to go and mess around with, because most all these chord types you can find they'll just shift quality by 1 note moving. So make a good study of that. It's going to be quite eye-opening to see just how simple a lot of these different chord shapes are and how similar they are to one another. Now, moving on, another very cool concept is that of playing around with what's was referred to by Howard Roberts as musical sense. Now, in example number 8A, I have a 4-bar phrase with bars 3 and 4 sounding really disconnected from bars 1 and 2. And I purposefully wrote them that way. So here's what example number 8A sounds like. So you can tell the second half of that sounds really out there. Here it is one more time. This almost sounds like it doesn't even fit properly at all. Now, in example 8B, the 3rd and 4th bars are going to be reworked to create a much more connected musical theme across all 4 bars. So check it out now. Here's example number 8B. So it's this almost as simple as thinking about phrases that are very outside and don't make sense, and then trying to rework them and have them make sense. So even sometimes when you're creating these really disconnected, it's almost like you're writing in a really silly fashion. But when you create some of these disconnected lines, sometimes they'll actually give you some interesting ideas that you may not want to use in the particular melodic curve of the line you're creating at that moment, but it could be something really interesting for another melodic phrase later on. So anyway, moving along here, my final example, example number 9, is going to be one of the most valuable Howard Roberts study concepts. It involves learning a musical idea to a high enough level of playing, whereas you do not need to look at your hands or look at the guitar fingerboard. This is a study technique that Howard referred to as playing by sound itself, and this involves playing a piece, basically, in a darkened room at the end of the whole study. So you want to practice up something to a very high level of competency, and you want to play it with 100% of your focus on the sound characteristics and not what you're doing with your hands. Now, the main idea here is that of playing so that the music becomes nothing but auditory for yourself. And the other concept is, of course, moving away from reading your music from, off of music performance band charts, lead sheets, or tab charts. See, far too often, musicians who are busy session players, or maybe students at music college, or those who play in either a church or a house band setting, will almost exclusively play all their songs from off of band charts. But when using this very different sound itself approach, as Howard used to call it, we can allow ourselves to make more sense of what's heard, and as well the various rules of how chord tones will interact. Now, in practicing this, you can either make up a chord progression or a melody of your own, or you can learn the progression that I created for this lesson plan. Now, my example progression can be found in your handout as example number 9, and it sounds like this. Well, know, when it comes down to unique educational experiences in regard to learning musicianship and specifically the idea of intense guitar education, Hollywood's Guitar Institute of Technology is certainly a one-of-a-kind facility. When I was there back in the 1990s, there were many applied areas for guitar performance that had me doing exercises for focusing on musical ability that targeted far more than just learning basic musical or guitar technique skills. The most valuable of those had to be the emphasis upon singing what we were going to play and all the concepts to do with accelerated learning like we were going through in this video lesson right now. Which were, of course, also heavily focused and centered upon doing visualization with the material that you happen to be studying and organizing. You know, all that work taught me that being a good musician comes down to being highly focused, having a great musical ear, and most of all, always being able to make musical sense of what I'm hearing if I'm composing or if I'm improvising or even if I'm just chart reading. Well, anyway, that's about all for now. Once again, thanks for watching. Have yourself a great week. You can download the handout and MP3 jam track for this video over at my website at andrewwasson.com, and you can follow me on Twitter, through Facebook, and on my other guitar blog YouTube channel. The links are all in the description box for you. Take care, everybody, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.